Why do you think that many couples all over the world today are finding it difficult to connect with their spouses? They are finding it difficult to communicate with their spouses. What do you think is the problem? Why is that happening? Why is it that outside their homes, they will connect with their colleagues, they will connect with their friends, they will communicate effectively with people outside, but when it comes to their homes, why is it difficult for them to connect with their spouses? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Transforming Marriages with Uju Onwuzulike. I am thrilled to be your host today. And today, I want to answer a question that someone asked me. Someone asked me, Mr. Uju, why is it difficult for my wife to connect with me, but this same woman, when she's outside, she doesn't have issue connecting with others. She doesn't have issue communicating with others. I also want to ask you a similar question. Why do you think that many couples all over the world today are finding it difficult to connect with their spouses? They are finding it difficult to communicate with their spouses. What do you think is the problem? Why is that happening? Why is it that outside their homes, they will connect with their colleagues, they will connect with their friends, they will communicate effectively with people outside, but when it comes to their homes, why is it difficult for them to connect with their spouses? So, providing answer to that and advising you on the way out, advising you on what you can do to be able to connect with your spouse is the essence of today's video. Couples all over the world are making one fundamental mistake when communicating with their spouses. And because they are unaware of these fundamental mistakes, they will continue to have disconnection with their spouses. They will continue not to communicate effectively with their spouses. But should that continue? No, it shouldn't continue. What is it that they need to stop? Many couples all over the world today are not quick to understand. So whenever they are communicating with their spouses, they are quick to defend themselves as opposed to being quick to understand. So in other words, in today's marriages, we fundamentally have listening problems. And because we have these listening problems in marriages, disconnection in marriages continue to fester. People are no more communicating effectively with their spouses. But should that continue? No, it shouldn't continue. Someone has said to me, Mr. Uju Onwuzulike, I don't have listening challenge with my spouse. And I looked at that person and I said to that person, you do. And I know that hundreds and millions of people are also saying the same thing, that they do not have listening challenges with their spouse. But I'm here to tell you that you do. According to Hans Zucker, listening comprises of four components. The first is what he called the non-listeners. The second component is what he called the marginal listeners. And the third is what he called the evaluative listeners. And the fourth, he called active listeners. So let's look at these components critically. And when we finish looking at them critically, you will be the judge to say whether you are truly listening to your spouse or you've been doing something else. So the first component, the non-listeners. The non-listeners here, quite all right, they are listening to their spouses. So when your spouse is communicating to you, you're listening to your spouse. But the problem here is that you are uninterested in whatever they are saying. And this is a challenge here because oftentimes it's difficult to ascertain that your spouse is uninterested in what you're saying. What if he or she is pretending to be listening to you, and meanwhile, deep down in his or her mind, they are uninterested in what you are saying? And this is a difficult place to be. I remember years back, I did an article on presenteeism and having a discussion with one of the EDs of the Nigeria Bank. He said to me, Uju, I have not thought about this. I only know of absenteeism. And of course, absenteeism is what we usually know when someone officially didn't take permission and that person didn't come to work. So you can easily say that so person is absent today. But what of presenteeism, which is a situation whereby someone is present in the office, someone is not absent, but that person is not adding value. So that is a tough place to be in organizations today. So when someone is in the office pretending to be working and probably chatting all day, so you will not say that this person is not at work, but this person is at work and this person is not adding value. That is the same thing that applies with the non-listeners. The non-listeners are listening to you, but they are uninterested. And when you are uninterested in whatever your spouse is communicating to you, there's no way you will have an understanding. In other words, you are not quick to understand because you are only uninterested. And when you are uninterested, there's no way you will build this connection with your spouse. So let's look at the second component. The second component is what he called the marginal listeners. Now, in this situation too, the person is also listening quite all right, but this person is listening, but he or she is exhibiting impatience. And because they are impatient, they are not paying attention to whatever you're saying. So the problem is not that they are not listening to you. And this is why a lot of times a husband might say, but I'm listening to my wife. Or the wife might also say, but I'm listening to my husband. But what they are doing is to marginally listening to their spouses. They are not paying attention to whatever their spouses are saying. And when you do not pay attention to what your spouse is saying, there's no way you understand what they are trying to convey. And because you do not pay attention, there's no way you connect with them. This is why you are having this connection issue with your spouse. So when you are a non-listener or you are a marginal listener, there's no way you'll be able to connect with your spouse. And there's no way you'll be able to communicate effectively with them. So that leads me to the third component. The third component is what he called the evaluative listener. Now, in evaluative listening, the problem here is that it's not as if that your spouse is not listening to you. In fact, your spouse might be listening with rapt attention, but he or she is not listening to understand. That's the big problem here. And oftentimes you wouldn't know that. Oftentimes you will not be able to decipher that your spouse, quite all right, that they are listening even with rapt attention, but they are not listening to understand. They are listening to analyze whatever you're saying, to pick holes from what you're saying. They are listening to be able to judge you. They are listening to be able to defend themselves. And this is what a lot of married couples are doing today. When you are being evaluative, when listening to your spouse, there's no way you will connect with them because you are not listening to understand. You are listening to judge them. And this is why many people would say that their wives, when they are in their offices, that they will connect easily with their colleagues. Do you know why that is so? When your wife is in her office, for example, and if she has something to say, her colleague will always give her a listening ear. Her colleague will pay rapt attention. Her colleague will listen to whatever she is saying, and in her mind, she's saying in her mind that, how come my husband is not listening to me, but this man is listening to me? How come my husband is not listening to me, but this man who is my colleague is listening to me? And because that colleague will listen to your wife will tend to connect more with him. Because to your wife, that her colleague is ready to hear what she's about to say or what she has to say. And that is not what you are doing. So because you are not doing that, you don't pay attention to what she's saying, you are marginally listening, you have been a non-listener, and you have been evaluating all she has been saying in order to defend yourself. And because you have been doing all that, there's no way you connect with her. So the fourth component or the fourth element is what is called active listeners. So in active listening, your spouse is paying attention to what you're saying. Your spouse is paying rapt attention. He or she is not just paying attention, but they're also paying attention to understand what you're saying. And active listening is what is lacking in today's marriages. So it is not about listening. The problem is not listening or lack of listening, but the problem is lack of active listening. So I'm encouraging you with today's video to begin to actively listen to your spouse. Be quick to understand. Don't be quick to defend yourself. So when you begin to listen to your spouse, when you begin to empathize with them as regard to what they are saying to you, when you begin to show them that you value what they have to say, when you begin to show them that spending time with them is worth it, and the only way you can prove that to them is when you actively listen to what they have to say. So when you do that in your communication, you will be able to communicate with your spouse. But if you don't do that, you will not communicate with your spouse. So I'm encouraging with this video to begin to be quick to understand, to seek understanding, to always pay attention when your spouse is communicating with you. If you do that, you'll be able to connect effectively with them. So when you do that, you won't have this problem again of not connecting with your spouse. So if you find value in today's video, I want you to subscribe. I want you to like. I also want you to comment. And in your comment, tell me what you have been. Tell me if you have been a non-listener. Tell me if you've been a marginal listener. Tell me if you've been an evaluative listener. And also tell me if you've been an active listener. And that is what I want you to be today. Till I see you next, keep supporting your spouses to be the best version of themselves and not the other way around. Enjoy the journey of your marriage.